All right, so this conversation we will be having later on in the bulletin with Peter Mathuki, who is a member of the East African Legislative Assembly, to just get a better understanding of what really is going on at that regional parliament, as well as the chairperson of the Pan-African Lawyers, Donald Dare, will also be joining us live via Skype from Geneva to weigh in on this issue. Our very own Timothy Otieno was in Arusha for about 2 weeks, just got back, and he has been covering extensively the East Africa Legislative Assembly. He now joins us live from our city centre studios with an update. Timothy, Kenya seems to have stalled operations at the regional parliament.
Indeed it has, and that grandstanding by both the Jubilee and the NASA side is apparently now paralyzing most of the situation and the work that is meant to be taking place there at the regional headquarters in Arusha, so much so that it almost paralyzed the passing of the 2017-2018 budget just last week. But if not for the grandstanding by then Speaker of EALA, Daniel Fred Kidega, to intercede and call upon all the members to come in and pass that particular budget. I remember that particular sitting, they sat up to almost 9 p.m. at night just to be able to pass that crucial budget, so that the Fourth Assembly's work would not be paralyzed due to lack of funds. But as is, there has already been a postponement of the swearing-in ceremony for all new members of EALA who are set to be sworn in on Monday this week. That will not happen. There's a postponement for about 2 weeks to allow Kenya time to submit its nominees list. All other countries have submitted their 9-member list to the East Africa Regional Assembly, including South Sudan, that will be joining the Regional Assembly for the very first time after they joined the charter to join the treaty back in February 2016. So as is, the rules of the House and the rules within the treaty for the establishment of the East Africa Community does allow for an instance where swearing-in ceremony for other members, other partner states who are ready, can take place even if there's a single partner state that is yet to submit its nominees list. The big question will be then, how then will they be able to conduct their sittings without Kenya represented? As is, that could be tricky, because anything that all other 5 partner states minus Kenya will agree on the floor of the assembly, it may then be hard for Kenya to subscribe to that particular law, because they can argue, we simply didn't have members at the floor of the assembly, so we cannot sign something that we were not party to. So that is the acid test, and that is perhaps the challenge that may arise. As it is, Kenya within itself is in a campaign period, and it appears most likely then, following what we saw yesterday, Thomas Mwadegu just submitting the same names that they have submitted before, and Parliament within itself is set to break, if I'm not wrong, next week. So it appears perhaps Kenya will have to submit these names after August the 8th. And that means it will be 3 months that EALA will not have its sitting, and that definitely will paralyze some of the activities taking place at the Regional Assembly, Akisa.
Well, Tim, you have engaged with the members from all these other member states who are at the summit in Arusha. What is the general feeling among other members from other countries?
The general feeling for some members, and I noticed this particularly with members from Uganda, was that Kenya in some way was sabotaging the activities at the Regional Assembly. But of course, these were claims that were quickly refuted by Kenyan members who were present at the Regional Assembly. As it is, about 3 out of the 9 Kenyan members are up for re-election, including Abubakar Ogle, who was nominated by the Jubilee Party, as well as Judith Pareno, the national chair for the ODM Elections Board, as well as Zain Abubakar, all from ODM. So the members who are there from Kenya, of course, distanced themselves from this line of thought, saying that indeed it wasn't an issue of sabotage, but just basically grandstanding by 2 political antagonists that have actually paralyzed this issue. And it's not the first time that Kenya is actually delaying its submission of names to the House. Apparently that took place in 2012 and I believe also in 2007 earlier on, where the House had to stay for about 6 months or so without holding sessions because of Kenya. But the mood of the people is that, especially the members of EALA, is that Kenya has been, it has been a perennial problem with Kenya just getting 9 names to represent the House. As it is, the notion has been that EALA, Kenya, in the Kenyan context, it has been believed that people who you send to EALA are political rejects, people who have either failed party primaries or people who are being rewarded for their loyalty to their parties and their party bosses. So already that within itself is painting Kenya in bad light. But nonetheless, the other regional partner states believe that this is an issue that Kenya actually needs to sort, and they have quoted that the treaty within itself states, and actually Akisa, one member had even suggested at the floor of the House to have an amendment to compel all countries to do the elections within the same time frame, compelling it. As it is, that actually takes place, but it's not a rule that has been adhered to, and particularly Kenya has not been faithful in honoring the timelines for submissions of names to the regional body. So the grandstanding continues, and that most likely will paralyze activities at the regional assembly.
So what? Kenya has a lot of vested political interests in how it picks its members, the various parties, and how they pick their members to represent us in the regional assembly, and this does not happen in the other countries?
Well, I think in Kenya, perhaps democracy is, in my personal opinion, I think the democracy is more mature. In other regional countries, like for example, Uganda, the NRM has almost complete dominance at the floor of the assembly. So you could find that, for example, in Uganda, out of the 9 possible names, NRM has to submit 7 out of them. And then the 7 that are submitted are rarely opposed by the opposition, because based on the fact that the oppositions in particular countries are viewed as very weak. For instance, in Rwanda, where the ruling party is seen as dominant, and whatever names that are submitted to the House for approval are almost voted for unanimously based on the strength of the ruling party at the floor of the assembly. But then again, there's issues of the methodology. Like in Rwanda, for instance, I was informed by one of the EALA members that parties don't actually nominate the names. The names are nominated by the electoral body of that particular country, and this is true for specifically Rwanda. The electoral body for Rwanda is the one that comes with the names and then submits it to the floor of the assembly for approval. Does that maybe stop this back and forth pull and push? Maybe, perhaps not, but I believe at the end of the day, parties want to dictate who they're sending to the regional assembly, and this is mainly based on party strength at the floor of the House. For Kenya, the problem could be the fact that maybe 1, we have a strong opposition, or maybe 2, we have perhaps much more mature politics in that we don't just send names without critiquing. For example, you saw the name of Kalonzo Musyoka's son, Kennedy Musyoka, bringing up issues. Earlier on, there had been issues of Oburu Odinga being nominated, and it had raised concern among Kenyans as to why he was being sent to the regional assembly after failing the party politics. So perhaps Kenya asks more questions, and perhaps this plays to the fact that it delays in submission of the list, and other countries more often than not have an easy time at the floor of the assembly based on the strength of the ruling party at their respective countries. Akisa.
Well, Timothy, thank you for that. A lot going down at the East African Legislative Assembly. Remember, Kenya has been given another 2 weeks to sort out their nomination list before the 4th Assembly is sworn in. So this is a story